L. Frank Baum wrote several books set in a land called Oz, the most famous of which was made into the film The Wizard of Oz. Within his series of Oz books are illustrated maps depicting clues to the origin of his marvelous tales. The main focus of research material used in this book is the first of 3 stories that appear in his first book, published in 1900, The First Wizard of Oz Omnibus. It was the first story from the 3 stories in that book that evolved into the American fairy tale classic film The Wizard of Oz, and was made by MGM in 1939. The intent is to reveal the mystery behind the evidence I found as to the source of the mystery maps found in the book Tik-Tok of Oz, revealing the blueprint of his fairy tales. Baum responded when interviewed about where he got such a tale, that he had discovered it rather than invented it. It should also be understood that the film is not an exact representation of the original tale. After publishing the first book of the Oz series, Baum wrote plays for the stage, which gave the first story many of the improvements found in the movie, and added the music. The Hollywood teams of the late 1930s did their magic for optimum viewing pleasure. They worked to take advantage of the newly developed color film. In the book, Dorothy is wearing silver shoes, but with the enhancement of color, the filmmakers changed them to ruby red. The focus of this book is to understand the origin of the maps that Baum claims he discovered, rather than penned from his own imagination. Oz readers and fans will identify with the maps and the mystery of them, as they do not appear in the film. Within the pages of this book is my evidence of the origin of the maps that Baum discovered. The maps were derived from drawing blueprints taken from the text of a King James Version Bible, circa 1611. Whether Baum understood the meaning behind the religious symbols found in the maps, as taught in religion, has no value. My intention is to prove that he used this information as the stage or blueprint for his magnificent fantasy series of published works about Baum's movie, The Wizard of Oz. Ministers have found bits and pieces to the clues that are within the Bible. This discovery will help further those who wish to explore the facts behind the story, and will provide a clearer picture of where to look for their own review. In the beginning of my drawing, I had not made any connection to the works of Baum. Through my own analysis of data gleaned from a searchable Bible, from the blueprints I created, I named the animated 3-dimensional building project God's Garden of Thought. My research will show the various biblical stories that take place in the boundaries of the region known as Eden, which appeared to me to be a metaphorical map of the process found in human thought. It was in building the blueprints in a 3-dimensional environment that revealed links to the mystery maps of Oz. The information included here will also explain the methodology I used to create the blueprints. The 3 blueprints that were planned included the Garden of Eden, Ezekiel's living creatures, and the new heaven in the book of Revelation. The first blueprint built was John's Revelation Kingdom that contains visual streets of gold. It was then that I saw the link to the movie scene in The Wizard of Oz, featuring the yellow brick road. Over the course of a year of building, within the model I found several links to the wonderful Wizard of Oz story. My focus from that moment on was researching the book and finding any links to connect it to the story. The internet has abundant information about Oz, as do many published books. It was during this research that I discovered the maps and the mystery of the flipped compass. There is a persistent mystery to be solved in the end papers in Baum's book titled Tik-Tok of Oz. Since its publication in 1914, it has puzzled Oz readers, leaving much room for speculation and discussion. Opening the cover to the front end paper, you see a map titled Map of the Marvelous Land of Oz, drawn by Professor Wafflebug, T.E. The compass rose shows an accurate compass. The first part of the mystery appears on the back end paper, which shows the first map in the center, but with a larger view of the land of Oz. Looking at the compass in the upper right corner, we see that the compass rose is flipped. East is where west should be. These same maps also appear in the end papers of the annotated Wizard of Oz by Michael Patrick Hearn, an Oz scholar and collector. The book was published in 1973. The second part of the mystery appears in the locations of the Winkie Country and the Munchkin Country. Within the text of the story, Dorothy first lands in Munchkin Country and kills the Wicked Witch of the East. Yet this map reflects a location in the West. Although this map appears in Tik-Tok of Oz, revealing the origin of these mystery maps is best accomplished through researching the first story, the first Wizard of Oz omnibus. The book contains a collection of 3 stories: The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, The Marvelous Land of Oz, and Ozma of Oz. Furthermore, on the heading of each page in the book appears the title First Oz Omnibus. The word omnibus means a public vehicle carrying many works. The first story, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, became the focus of my research, as it was this story specifically that evolved into the MGM movie, The Wizard of Oz. Reading through various fan websites and researching what could be read about L. Frank Baum as a person, it is the opinion of the International Wizard of Oz Club that the incorrect compass should be corrected. The IWOC holds the current corrected Oz map, illustrated by Dick Martin, an active Oz fan for the IWOC, who left to the club his unparalleled collection of Baum and Oz material. This assumed correction to the map made no sense to me, as Baum would have directed his illustrator to draw the compass flipped, as well as the country locations. On the contrary, by binding the book's end papers, he gives us a clue to the reasoning behind the flipped compass. The earliest map is from the Land of Oz, designed by L. Frank Baum for the Fairy-Log and radio plays, 1908 to 09. These plays were an early attempt to bring his book to the movie screen. The films were colored, credited as Illuminations, by Duval Frères of Paris, in a process known as radio play, and were noted for being the most lifelike, hand-tinted imagery of the time. Baum once claimed in an interview that a certain Michael Radio was the Frenchman who had colored the films, though no evidence of such a person, even with the more proper French spelling of Michele, has been documented. Radio play did not refer to the contemporary concept of radio, or, for that matter, a radio play, but played on notions of the new and fantastic at the time. It is similar to the way high-tech, or sometimes cyber, would be used later in the century. The Fairy-Log part of the title was meant to liken it to a travelogue, which at the time was a very popular type of documentary film entertainment. In this earliest map, we see the Munchkins accurately in the east, and the Winkies in the west. The colors he chose to color the Land of Oz present a hint to the origin of this map. The first map has the Winkie Country in yellow, the Gillikin Country in sage green, the Munchkin Country in royal blue, and the Quadling country in burnt orange. This map accurately reflects where the house lands in the Munchkin country after the cyclone strikes, killing the Wicked Witch of the East. The star and the pencil line illustrate the road leading to the Emerald City. The foundation of the origin of the story. A scene appearing in the book and not the film has the four travelers building a raft to cross a river. This must be the scribbled line going from the Munchkin country to the Quadling country. Baum's parents were prosperous from the oil business. The young Baum suffered from a weak heart. His parents indulged him on their vast estate, which they called the Rose Lawn. Baum went on a business trip with his father and was left to wait in a printer's office. By the time his father returned, young Baum had to have a little printing press of his own. At the age of 15, Baum and his brother Harry had begun publishing a small newspaper they called the Rose Lawn Home Journal. When you open and close the book, Tik-Tok of Oz, you can see a simulated printing press movement from the cover to the back of the book. The workings of a printing press are an antitype of the actual print, a mirror image. In the book, we do not see an obvious mirror image or an exact antitype illustration, except in the flipped compass. When you compare the content of the story to the map, you then obviously see the map is flipped, the illustrations being the antitype to the story. The Los Angeles Times posted a review of the book, The Real Wizard of Oz, by Rebecca Longcrane, in which the author notices the mirror imagery. The marbled end papers of the books he read as a boy mirrored the inside of the rooms of the time, creating a sense of continuum between the outside world and the world of stories. Sifting through the stories to be read about Baum, it is evident no one fully grasped that he was using his printing press skills to give a clue to the origin of the maps that produced the story he declared he had discovered. To anyone lacking his unique life experiences and his extraordinary imagination, it would be assumed that the flipped compass was a mistake. This led to the correction of his early illustrations over time, which in turn led the viewers of the film The Wizard of Oz away from the origin. Historically, Baum's statements in interviews were puzzling. He is generally regarded to have been in the bad habit of making up tales. His explanations were interpreted as lies, which led to the lack of reliability as to the true origin of the Oz series. This is because the obvious fact always remained that the text of the story would not be changed, but the maps certainly could be, as seen in the map reproduced in 1980 for the International Wizard of Oz Club. There are many books published that report on the life and the times in which L. Frank Baum lived. Many symbolic links have been the commentary to what he directly experienced in his lifetime, and they are valid in comparing to the story. His unique childhood, as well as his poor health, certainly allowed him the creativity and time to explore his imagination. Through the rest of this book, my opinions based on my illustrated research will reveal the origin of the amazing story that Baum indeed did discover, unveiling the missing links with the evidence of the maps and the original literary text. The differences between the process of discovery resulting in the creation of the same maps amazed me. My research used the speed of the search engine with a modern-day computer. Baum had no technology other than the literature of his era, experience running a printing press, leisure time, and his imagination. Furthermore, perhaps some of those speculative things he said to journalists will now be answered. Prior to any knowledge of the mystery maps of the land of Oz, for a hobby I created blueprints, using my drafting and database programming skills, performing word searches in a searchable, authorized King James Version Bible. It was not difficult to find the passages needed to draw the technical sketch. The Eden blueprint is produced from the following Bible text. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel. That is it which goeth toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. Genesis chapter 2, verses 9 through 14. The text describes the Garden of Eden as 3 named lands and 4 named riverheads. Depicted in the midst of the whole garden is the tree of life, which translates to the center on the blueprint. The rivers Pison and Gihon give us the picture of the rivers encompassing the whole land, which directs the rivers to flow right back into the source. The river Hiddekel goes toward the east to Assyria, and the river Euphrates has no land name or direction. The western area of Havilah depicts good gold, a match to Baum's map using yellow. The west section depicted in the story is named Winkies, appearing on the earliest map in yellow. The map is mysteriously flipped on the end papers of Tik-Tok of Oz, with the Winkies appearing in the east. To clarify, the map is reversed to that of the story, not just the compass. Straight lines were used that caused 4 equal sections, being divided by 4 rivers. 2 of the lands with encompassed rivers directed me to draw the cross-angle shape. The earliest map of Oz also has this square shape, and Baum labeled the surrounding empty space the desert. In comparing the Oz map to the Eden blueprint, we see a match to the square shape that I used in aligning the rivers and marking the land boundary lines in accordance to a compass. We also see a relationship to the line that goes toward the east, matching the symbolism for the river going toward Assyria. The star symbol in the center of the east section of the Eden blueprint is drawn to illustrate where God placed Adam and the tree of knowledge. The following verses are used. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Genesis chapter 2, verse 8. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Genesis chapter 2, verse 9. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Genesis chapter 3, verse 3. So he drove out the man, And he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life. Genesis chapter 3, verse 24. The location of the tree of life versus the tree of knowledge was puzzling, as both are illustrated to be in the midst of the garden. The blueprint gives a better understanding through the fact that the garden is divided into 4 lands. Therefore, each land would have a midst, and the whole of the garden would have a midst. Since Adam is clearly placed in the east of Eden, and he is told to not eat of the tree in the midst thereof, it becomes evident that it is meant to be the midst of the eastern section. Doing several word searches for the text with the river names, the compass directions, and the land names to create the Eden blueprint revealed a pictorial match using the Genesis imagery of 4 heads. In the emblems relating to the story found in the facts behind the 12 tribes of Israel, the 4 heads, or emblems, for the 4 lands are as follows. East of Eden, Assyria, Bible symbol Judah, emblem lion head. South Eden, Ethiopia, Bible symbol Reuben, emblem man head. West Eden, Havilah, Bible symbol Ephraim, emblem ox head. North Eden, unnamed, Bible symbol Dan, emblem eagle head. Relating to specifically the childhood religion of Baum, Christianity, he most likely would have learned the Christian meaning behind the symbols. This symbolism is also found in the Merkabah, meaning to ride, and taught in Judaism as well as Kabbalah. The map of Eden shows another blueprint that is not obvious to see. In the structure of the human heart, the same illustration can be seen. It is a self-contained body of fluid, and from the source it flows out and back into the source. The Franklin Institute in Philadelphia has a substantial walkthrough of the human heart titled The Giant Heart Exhibit. Since it was opened in 1954 and recently enlarged in 2004, it has been considered an icon of the area. In the sculpture, there are 4 cavities, or open spaces, inside the heart that fill with blood. Furthermore, there is a blood fountain representing the 4 components of plasma, red and white blood cells, and platelets. This exhibit displays how blood transports chemical messages, nutrients, and oxygen through the body. This aspect of matching artwork found in the human anatomy, based on science, took me to a new point of view. It led me to believe Baum was portraying through his characters another type of heart, the human emotional heart. In the 4 characters, it is easy to see that Baum transposed his view into the development being depicted as 4 directions of human emotion: courage, heart, brain, and a home. Much in the same way, blood transports chemical messages through the body. Our experiences transport messages, causing our emotions. Law of reflection. The flow of directions in the quadrants of the Eden blueprint lead us also to the imagery found in the law of reflection. It is evident from reading the story, Baum became privy to the law of reflection. The book has the 4 travelers enter to see the wizard, one by one. In the movie, they all enter together. His printing press skills are the most obvious for creating the mirror image between Kansas and Oz, using the law of reflection vision. It will be helpful to have this knowledge to understand the other blueprints when seen as a whole. The thing to note here is the Eden blueprint is showing 4 reflections, not just one. By definition, specular reflection is the mirror-like reflection of light from a surface, in which light from a single incoming direction is reflected into a single outgoing direction. Such behavior is described by the law of reflection, which states that the direction of incoming light and the direction of outgoing light reflected make the same angle with respect to the surface normal. Thus the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. This is commonly stated as the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. This behavior was first discovered through careful observation and measurement by Hero of Alexandria, year 10 to 70 AD. Through the 4 reflections of the Eden blueprint, we see my research reveals Baum transposed the following. Assyria of the east became the Munchkin country, and Ethiopia of the south became the Quadling country. Havilah in the west became the Winkie country, and the north became Gillikin country. In seeking the imagery for this level, heaven was the obvious first word to search and begin the blueprint construction. The computer search reported heaven occurs 739 times in 691 verses. It took a few weeks to read them all, in their context. To present the arguments over the course of that research would require volumes of books, verse by verse, so it is better just to announce the result that clearly illuminates my findings for the blueprint. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Genesis chapter 1, verse 8. The word firmament and heaven seem to be interchangeable in the context of the research. Included is a verse directing that God call the heaven firmament. Evaluating the definitions in combination from the meanings found in a Merriam-Webster's dictionary, in my opinion as a drafter, it translates to a foundation. Going through the maze of passages led me to search on the phrase foundation of the world. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Matthew chapter 25, verse 34. This gave me a link to John's Revelation Kingdom vision, revealing it appears first in the creation story under the word heaven, being the foundation on which all else is built. In the English language, the word apocalypse is often rendered as revelation, since the literal meaning of the Greek word is the act of revealing or unveiling. The book opens with the revelation of Jesus Christ. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to shew unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. Revelation chapter 21, verse 1. For the blueprint design, chapter 21 of Revelation is used. The author John begins with witnessing a vision he receives from an angel. He records the illustration as a new heaven and a new earth, due to the first heaven and earth passing away, and there is no more sea. Furthermore, he declares, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal." Revelation chapter 21, verse 16. And he measured the wall thereof, 144 and 4 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of an angel. Revelation chapter 21, verse 17. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. Revelation chapter 21, verse 13. And the building of the wall of it was of jasper, and the city was pure gold, like unto clear glass. Revelation chapter 21, verse 18. And the foundation of the wall of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third a chalcedony, the fourth an emerald. Revelation chapter 21, verse 19. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Every several gate was of 1 pearl. And the street of the city was pure gold, as it were transparent glass. Revelation chapter 21, verse 21. The length, breadth, and height of the city are equal, illustrating a square box shape. Using the reed measurement system, which is also known as Israel, he reports 12,000 furlongs, that translate to approximately 1,500 miles. The walls of the city have 12 layers of precious gemstones, and each layer has a name. There are 12 gates, 3 on 4 sides. Translate every several gate to be the 3 gates illustrated as 1 pearl. The street of the city depicts it to be pure gold, like unto transparent glass. In chapter 22, we note additional imagery to help us complete the blueprint, adding rivers and the location of the street. The text reveals that the location of the tree of life is in the midst of the street and can be seen from both sides of the river. And he shewed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Revelation chapter 22, verses 1 and 2. A river flows out of the throne in a square, box-shaped city, with a gate on each side. This shows the street originating in the center leading to each gate. Not pictured is the river, as there is no way to know exactly the direction. The tree of life is seen on either side of the river. The result would be an island in the center. It is not given if the river flows north to south or east to west to know the exact location of the river. The illustration reveals that the tree of life exists on both the Eden and heaven blueprints. In this blueprint, we find a verse that specifically tells us to make this link to the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Revelation chapter 21, verse 12. While surfing the internet on the term, I came across a website selling authentic Jewish paraphernalia that displayed a diagram titled The Encampment of Israel. Having the Oz maps before me, the diagram proved to be a striking resemblance to the layout of the larger Oz map found on the back end papers of Tik-Tok of Oz. After further searches into the origin of the diagram, I discovered that the picture is commonly used in studying the 12 tribes of Israel. The original artist is unknown. On the top left and lower are illustrated 3 divided lands each. On the right are 12 lands divided. In comparing the 2 diagrams, the upper left corner on the Oz map illustrates the words, "no land," matching the uninhabited area of the encampment diagram. On the upper right is non-estic ocean. It is derived from the Latin phrase non est, which means does not exist. This also caused a valid comparison to the heaven blueprint with the Bible text that says, "There is no more sea." The 2 phrases are saying the same thing, which fascinated me. It caused me to wonder at the unraveling of Baum's secret encoding within his treasure maps of the human mind, as seen through the eyes of the character, Dorothy. My previous studies had already revealed it to be God's garden of thought. To see the same story through the writing style of Baum gave me more passion to write this book in an attempt to reveal the origin of the mystery maps. It became obvious after building the level of heaven above and Eden below, where the inspiration for the famous song, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," originates. The streets of heaven are made of gold, which obviously points to the infamous yellow brick road, which is not pictured in this illustration. It also became clear from looking at the model that the Eden level is the mirror image to the heaven level, which explains the flipped compass. The Eden level Baum transposed into the metaphor for the home of Dorothy, famously known as Kansas. More easily recognized, the film depicts those scenes in black and white, matching the imagery in the book and film. Baum clearly describes the scenes before the cyclone as gray. The illustration shows the printing press motion Baum must have used to transpose his blueprint into the cleverly written story. In the beginning of my research, it was unclear how to draw and understand a cherub that sits on top of the ark. From the literature available, my need for facts was not satisfied with the traditional explanations, which are all lacking passages or references that corroborate them. It took several years of research for me to decipher the imagery from the text and to create the 3-dimensional blueprint. Here we find the symbolism in the ark that Baum used to create the characters the Great Oz, and in later stories, Ozma. The Great Oz is discovered hiding behind a screen in the first Oz book. It's a curtain in the movie. The obvious that stands out here is that the ark is behind the curtain, and the Great Oz is found behind a screen. Chapter 1 opens with Ezekiel by the river of Kibar, and he describes the heavens opening and him seeing visions of God. He describes 4 creatures. All are identical in appearance, each one having 4 faces: man, ox, lion, and eagle. The cherubim creatures have 4 wings each, 2 covering their body and 2 touching the others. Their body, backs, and hands are full of eyes. Their bodies are the likeness of a man, with feet like the sole of a calf. The vision depicts an animation of them appearing and disappearing in a flash of fire and lightning, with a light as a lamp moving up and down them. Sketching the imagery as they appear is as follows: rainbows around man on a throne, layer of terrible crystal, giant wheels, and fiery creatures full of eyes, touching and not touching the earth. The text is also clear to point out that they move at the speed of light, flashing in and out of appearance. Some very old art exists in the public domain that depicts this imagery. Baum could have been privy to it, writing the schematics of the imagery in order from top to bottom reveals a method found in the process of surveillance. The Central Intelligence Agency of the United States teaches agents a spy tactic known as the rabbit and the tail. This became evident to me while watching the movie Sneakers, which starred Robert Redford. Sneakers is a complex but light-hearted thriller about computers and cryptography, released in 1992. It was directed by Phil Alden Robinson and written by Robinson, Walter F. Parks, and Lawrence Lasker. The scene they presented for the surveillance involved men in a van with portable computers and a hidden camera planted on the operative. This allowed the men in the van to monitor everything the spy saw without directly looking or even being present. The giant wheels full of eyes go up and down, always following the creatures. It is overly clear to declare the wheels follow the creature, and they do not spin. This represents an illustration of the biblical word for omnipotent, omniscience, all-seeing and/or all-knowing. The imagery depicts these animated wheels to follow the spirit of the creature. In other words, these moving wheels full of eyes I likened to a movie camera, following one specific entity called a creature. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 20. The creatures are said to be in the likeness of a man. This does not mean gender for male and female, at least not precisely. One could assume, but cannot prove, the gender of the 4 creatures. Historically, art has portrayed them as all male, all female, and 2 male and 2 female. The label cherub is well considered to be a reference to the character called Satan, and he has many names in the Bible. However, for the sake of revealing the story Baum illustrates, we have enough imagery to see that these 4 fiery creatures under the wheels cherubim are not real entities, but rather metaphors for the ways of God. We see in the following passage that it illustrates 4 names. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Revelations chapter 12, verse 9. Going back to the Eden blueprint in reference, there are cherubim placed to guard the way to the tree of life, which is in the midst of the entire garden. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Genesis chapter 3, verse 24. When they went upon their four sides. They turned not as they went, but to the place whither the head looked, they followed it. They turned not as they went. Ezekiel chapter 10, verse 11. In the Oz story, Baum stays true to Ezekiel. The cherubim do not turn. They each guard the way to the tree of life, from the center of Eden, from their respective positions of the compass. It should be clear to see now the link between the four rivers, the four countries, the four creatures, the four heads, and the four cherubim. When Dorothy and her fellow travelers first go to see Oz on page 51, each one is told to enter alone. Each of the characters witnesses a different image of Oz, and each is told the same thing: to kill the other witch, as she is very evil and needs to be killed. In chapter 11, titled The Wonderful City of Oz, the text shows the same example. Each character would see a different cherubim guard, or terrible Oz, linking it to the four different cherubim guards of the Bible blueprint. Appearing on page 56, Dorothy witnesses the following scene.
But what interested Dorothy most was the big throne of green marble that stood in the middle of the room. It was shaped like a chair and sparkled with gems, as did everything else. In the center of the chair was an enormous head, without a body to support it, or any arms or legs whatever. There was no hair upon its head, but it had eyes and a nose and a mouth, and was much bigger than the head of the biggest giant.
Appearing on page 58, the Scarecrow witnesses the following scene.
So the Scarecrow followed him and was admitted into the great throne room, where he saw, sitting in the emerald throne, a most lovely lady. She was dressed in green silk gauze and wore upon her flowing green locks a crown of jewels. Growing from her shoulders were wings, gorgeous in color and so light that they fluttered if the slightest breath of air reached them.
Appearing on page 59, the Woodman, Tin Man, witnesses the following scene.
But when the woodman entered the great throne room, he saw neither the head nor the lady, for Oz had taken the shape of a most terrible beast. It was nearly as big as an elephant, and the green throne seemed hardly strong enough to hold its weight. The beast had a head like that of a rhinoceros, only there were 5 eyes in its face. There were 5 long arms growing out of its body. It also had 5 long, slim legs. Thick, woolly hair covered every part of it, and a more dreadful-looking monster could not be imagined. It was fortunate the Tin Woodman had no heart at that moment, for it would have beat loud and fast from terror.
Appearing on page 60, the Lion witnesses the following scene.
The lion at once passed through the door, and glancing around saw, to his surprise, that before the throne was a ball of fire, so fierce and glowing he could scarcely bear to gaze upon it. His first thought was that Oz had by accident caught on fire, and was burning up. But when he tried to go nearer, the heat was so intense that it singed his whiskers, and he crept back tremblingly to a spot nearer the door.
Using the law of reflection applied to the blueprints, each character is reporting back to Dorothy, center spirit, what it saw, independently of each other, thereby showing the cherubim do not spin. They stay fixed to their respective quadrant. So there would be a cherub, or terrible Oz, appearing to each emblem, or face, independently, just as Baum illustrates in that scene. Why Kansas? Historians report that Baum dwelled in the harshness of the Dakota Territory, and it is often speculated that this is where he gets his imagery for Kansas. This indeed may be true. However, when looking at the map of the United States in 1899, California was included, and Hollywood did exist. This shows that he chose Kansas due to the center location on the map in relation to the rest of the country. He also depicts the wizard as being from Omaha, which would be north of the center. He also describes the Eden portion of the blueprints as black and white, or very gray. Still feeling a little lost as to what all this means? For me, it has been one mystery after another, finding the treasure to be seen in the story Baum tells inspired by the Bible translation of King James. My findings conclude in the imagery Baum discovered Dorothy to be a creature. The Bible model depicts this with 4 faces, reflecting to 4 images. He transposed into the characters in the story. Imagine the human head with 4 faces, 4 points of view, each with its own experiences, culminating in what we call thought. This means all the characters in Oz are an aspect of Dorothy. That is to say, in the process of thought. Her mind shows the mechanics of thought through success and failures, transposed from the story surrounding the 12 tribes of Israel, self-contained from the seed inside the human body.
This video was made and brought to you by Michele Radio.